there's a real problem in the United States, a very serious problem in the United States that has to do with a lack of understanding. And I want to try to just remedy this very quickly. A lack of understanding on the part of the American people as a consequence of 34 years of Reaganomics propaganda about how economies work. The thing that drives an economy is something that economists refer to as aggregate demand. Now, you can find documentation of this arguably all the way back to Aristotle. And, this has been well understood for literally thousands of years. Adam Smith wrote about this in A Theory of Moral Sentiments and touched on it in Wealth of Nations. David Ricardo, that was 1776. 1807, David Ricardo writing about it on labor. John Maynard Keynes in his numerous books, but his general theory of economics. And right up to today. But an aggregate demand is the amount of money that people have to spend and actually do spend, right? Not just what they have that they could spend, but what they actually do spend or are willing to spend. So aggregate demand, which is what drives economies, comes out of what? Wages. The thing that drives an economy is wages. Because if people make money, they spend that money. In addition to wages driving demand, pretty much anything that generates economic activity that is of a consumption variety, that causes people to buy things, also stimulates an economy. So, for example, one of the most effective stimulus programs for an economy, food stamps. You spend $1 on food stamps, you make $1.30 in economic activity. Long-term unemployment benefits. Spend $1 million in long-term unemployment benefits, you make $1.5 million in the economy. And arguably a lot more because money circulates through an economy multiple times. The problem that we have, of course, is that our trade policies are such. It used to be that somebody would get a wage, they would get their paycheck, then they would go to the store and they would buy something that was, they'd go buy a pair of socks. And that pair of socks came from a mill down the street in South Carolina here. And the mill then hired people to make the socks and it paid those people a salary, and those people then took their paychecks and they went out and they bought stuff. And so it just, is this, it's called a virtuous cycle. That virtuous cycle got broken with one of the principal tenets of Reaganomics, which is that protectionist trade policies are not a good idea. And so, since the 80s, we have been increasingly, and this is ongoing. I mean, this dimension of Reaganomics is being advocated right now, even by this administration to some extent with TPP. Although Harry Reid is standing in the middle of the stream here like a boulder, holding his hand up and saying, stop. And if Harry Reid loses control of the Senate, I predict that you will see fast track passed and TPP passed within the next few months. This is one of the really, really bad outcomes of Republicans taking over the Senate. Excuse me. The sales pitch. So demand is what drives an economy. So if the real, quote, job creators, Frank Lunt's phrase that has been used by Republicans to describe rich people, but the real job creators, actual people who are creating jobs, are the people who are spending all of their paycheck or are using their food stamps or are using their long-term unemployment benefits or are, whatever it may be. whatever, whether, even if it's government, even if it's the dole, right? Whatever it is, if they're spending that money, they're stimulating the economy. So what have Republicans done over the last 6 years since President Obama's been in the White House? They have cut long-term unemployment benefits. Last Christmas, I mean, I thought, this is so heartless, I can't imagine that they're going to do this and get away with it. But they did. They cut long-term unemployment benefits, and now 3 or 4 million people have lost their unemployment benefits because the Republicans filibustered the legislation as it came to the Senate. And why would they do that? Well, the simple answer is they would do that because it's going to make the economy worse. Why would Republicans make the economy worse? So they can brag about it. Tune into any right-wing talk show. Watch Fox News. Listen to the conservative pundits who come on this program. They sit around going, oh, look at the unemployment rate is really even worse than you think it is. They're bragging. Wages are going down. Been going down for 30. They're bragging. Average person is getting screwed. People can't afford their homes. They're bragging. Kids are in debt like they've never been. They're bragging. This is Republicans bragging. And their plan for the next 2 years, particularly if they get control of the Senate, their plan for the next 2 years is to take this country down economically. Because economics always beats, the only thing that can beat economics in an election is war. So if they can make the economy bad enough, if they can do to President Obama what the Arab oil boycott did to President Carter, and the economy, frankly, was not all that bad under Carter. It was doing quite well. It's just inflation got up there a bit as a consequence of the oil boycott. But the net of it is that the Republicans, they've made all this grand hoo-ha about it, and inflation actually peaked during the Reagan administration, but still, people don't tend to remember that. Carter got blamed for it. So they're trying to Jimmy Carterize Barack Obama. And they don't care who gets hurt. They don't care who loses their job. They don't care who's losing their home. They don't care whose marriage is breaking up. They don't care who's committing suicide. Yes, suicides are up. As the BBC documented, over a 100-year period in England, when conservatives were in control, suicides went up. When liberals were in control, or Labour, they call it in the UK, suicides went down. Republicans don't care. Like they were saying last night on my TV show, hey, let people work for 50 cents an hour. And don't even pay them with money. Pay them with food. If you're going to, this is actually what John Kasich is proposing in Ohio. If you want food stamps, if you want to get $2 or $3 a day worth of food stamps, you have to work 4 hours a day. Picking up trash by the side of the road, cleaning out waste from a hospital, whatever it may be, free, unpaid. Or prove that you have spent that 20 hours that week pounding the pavement, knocking on the doors of employers. 50 cents an hour. Talk about minimum wage. This is, John Kasich in Ohio wants that to be the new minimum wage in Ohio. And we'll pay you with food. I mean, that's how bizarre it is.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So when you get it that demand is what drives economies, you get it that if you want to strengthen the economy, you increase wages at the bottom end of the wage scale.